It's these scenes in Bucha that Ukraine's president says is merely an example of what has happened in many cities and towns around his country, accusing Russia of being colonizers in ancient times as he slammed the council for not protecting his country amid widespread atrocities.
We are dealing with a state that is turning the veto into the UN Security Council into the right to die. This undermines the whole architecture of global security. It allows them to go unpunished. So they are destroying everything that they can. So if this continues, the countries will rely only on the power of their own arms to ensure their security, and not on international law, not rely on international institutions. The United Nations can be simply closed. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to close the UN? Do you think that the time of international law is gone? If your answer is no, then you need to act immediately.
He called for the restoration of the UN Charter and for urgently needed reforms to be implemented within the UN system and for the fair representation in the Security Council of all regions of the world, as he charged Russia with a lack of accountability.
They will blame everyone just to justify their own actions. They will say that there are various different versions and it is impossible to establish which one of those versions is true. They will even say that the bodies of those kills were allegedly thrown away and all videos are staged. But it is 2022 now. We have conclusive evidence, so there are satellite images. We can conduct full and transparent investigation. That is what we are interested in.
As Zelenskyy accused Russia of atrocities comparable to those conducted by the terrorist group ISIS, Russia's envoy rejected claims his country's military was responsible for the well-documented targeting of civilians, while claiming that Nazi elements were running Ukraine, blaming them for much of the criminality placed at Moscow's doorstep.
There
are Russians and Ukrainians tortured to death with swastikas burned into their chests. There are looters and criminals who you distributed weapons to. There are civilians and foreigners who are held hostages. And in spite of all factual evidence and common sense, you're trying to lay the blame for their death on the Russian military. This is absolutely unacceptable. The fact that even consider that Russian military would be capable of this. And now we're seeing blatant criminally staged events with the Ukrainian civilians who are killed by their own radicals in the best traditions of Goebbels to accuse the Russian army. Those killed in the areas from which the Russian forces withdrew after encouraging peace negotiations in Istanbul. So now it turns out that we shouldn't have withdrawn. I'm talking about Bucha first and foremost.
The UN has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire as the emergency relief coordinator Martin Griffiths travels between Moscow and Kyiv in the latest effort to achieve just that. President Zelenskyy also called for an international tribunal similar to Nuremberg to try anyone responsible for the killing of his civilians as the United States ramps up efforts in the General Assembly to have Russia expelled from the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. That requires a two-thirds majority. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, for his part, called for an independent investigation to guarantee effective accountability for alleged crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.